All right, so this is a bit of a delayed screen recording, and I think you could tell it's more than likely because I got a little carried away with designing my scene. I talked to some of you. This is just one of those softwares, right? I got into making my trees. Look at these barrels. I mean, they're not real. Those are 8-bit, but they look real, right? So here's my scene. Again, I got into it too much. It's just over here you can see I just did my background. I think I kind of built on what we did before, and I added a bit of a game space to it, okay? What I want to do for this particular one is it's going to seem simple. It's going to be a quick little video here, but at the same time, make sure you're mastering this and understanding these things versus just replicating what I'm doing, okay? It's really going to be a helpful thing to, what do they call it? Like the development logic, the design logic behind some of these things. It's going to help as we progress, okay? And just to show you what I've done here is, I got my truck. You've seen the truck. I got some things moving around here. This little barrier here. I got trees. Something that I think is neat for you to see is if I go through, oh boy, this little tree set here, see how the Z space that I set up? See how it looks like I'm behind that tree but in front of the other one? It really kind of adds some depth to it. So consider doing something like that. You know, there I am. I'm behind the bush but in front of the tree, and it just adds some nice depth to this thing too. Some gameplay here that you can see is I'm driving along, and if I get into this little, look, now I'm stuck, okay? Darn it. But I could jump out. Like most trucks, you can jump out of holes. And that's that. And then off I go. So that's just kind of a design thing that I've done here, you know? And if you remember, I added to this truck, which would be your game player, I added not only the platform, but also this scroll too over here in the bottom. And that is just so the camera per se, the viewport, follows the truck so I can continue through this scene. And some things that some of you might do, and I'll show you, I'm actually going to share 2 videos just to kind of be helpful, is you can have this scene that I have here that's straight across, or you could even, you know, go along and jump down and make this thing go back. And again, I'll share multiple videos just so get some different perspectives on this. But here's my truck, okay? And what I wanted to do, as we are going to do with most character games, is I wanted to shoot something. In this case, it's going to be a horn noise. But I also wanted to kind of drip, maybe, right? So by dripping, I mean what I want to do is kind of come along here and maybe drip some oil into these barrels. Why? I don't know. I'm just trying to give you some instruction and come up with a game that kind of does that, all right? And this is where I was talking about before of having your object layer. And let me fix this quick here. I have this object layer, and in it are 2 objects, as you can see. One here is, this is going to be kind of my horn sound. See, it's kind of like that sound pushing a wave. And then I have the oil drip that I spoke of. And I just drew these really quick, nothing major, just a couple lines, right? And then I put some animation on it. And I'm just going to go ahead and loop that for you. Right, so it just looks like it's coming out of the truck horn, right? Like burp, or whatever a truck horn sounds like. And then I have the drip here. I don't think I have an animation. Do I have an animation on that? Oh, I do. I do. And then you can see that animation is just, I have this kind of glare here on my drip, and it just kind of switching back and forth. You could do whatever you want. I know some of you have been messing around with the effects, so if I wanted to, I could have put an effect on this. If you go over here, I got all of these things. They have the blend effect. I could make it change colors. Do you see here? There is a distortion, right? If I want to do the bulge or make it look like a glass or a pulse. So you could add effects to kind of what you're doing here. But ultimately, the idea is that you create this on a separate layer, or are we calling them layouts? So it's going to be kind of your library of objects. And the reason that is because I don't want it to appear on my level. I only want it to appear when I enact some sort of shooting, right? So to do that, oh, no, you don't do that. To do that, you want to start off in your event sheet here. And again, we want to get into the habit of looking at the events that we already have, okay? In this sense, what I want to do is I want to press the space bar, and I want the horn to shoot, okay? And I don't have any of that. I do have some keyboard things, but one is the right arrow, the other is the left arrow, so there's nothing I can do, so I have to add another event. So I'm going to add the event, and I'm going to choose keyboard, right? Because I do, in fact, want a key to be something that triggers an event. So you can see, again, the suggestive here. It's yellow, so I'm going to go ahead and say on key pressed. Which key do I want? I'm going to say spacebar. And then I'm going to say done. So now I'm good to go. I'm going to say when they press, I want something to happen. And what I want to happen is I want this horn to appear, right? I just don't want it to appear, though. I want it to appear as if it's coming from the truck, right? So my next step, just like we do in Storyline and Captivate, is choosing the object that we want the action or trigger to occur to, right? So spacebar, what do? I want the truck. Okay, well, what do I want it to do? And this is where it gets interesting. And I encourage you to look at these things first. You're going to watch this video, but if you were doing this on your own, you know, you're looking at these things, and I definitely don't want to set the angle. There's nothing to do with animation. Here we go into appearance. Nothing I want to do there. Keep looking, keep looking. And I'm going to lie when I say where this is. I don't know where it is. I'm just going to type it in. But oh, there it is. Sorry. So miscellaneous, of course, it's under miscellaneous. Is spawn another object, right? So even if you don't know what spawn means, you could probably figure it out. What I basically want is the truck to have another object appear from it, which we know we want it to be that horn. So I'm going to go ahead and say spawn another object, and then it's going to ask me what object. So I click to choose. Again, just like Storyline and Captivate, it brings up my little library and all that. And I'm going to say horn. And then I'm going to say OK. Everything else, boom, done. So here we go. Keyboard, when I go ahead and hit the space bar, my truck is going to spawn the horn. Right? Should work beautifully. Driving along, driving along. Oh, there it goes. Okay, beeping away. Beeping away. Now, one thing that I want to make sure that you're doing is, so that did work, right? You can see it working just fine. One thing that I want to make sure you're doing is, of course, and I think we talked about this in the last class, I do want this to spawn, but you can see that I had a specification here of the layer. So be careful of that, because if you look over here in my layer space, my layer 0, right, over here 0 is the background. My game space is layer 1. That means if I were to, right now, based on what my event says, my horn is spawning on layer 0. So if I wanted to have that collide with something, it's not going to work because I need it to be on the same layer, right? We talked about that, I think, last week a little bit. So make sure that, albeit it's working, right? Like I can visually see my horn going, I do need to make sure that for now and in the future, it's on the same level of things that I want it to interact with, okay? So here we go, spawn horn on layer 1, which my game space, at image point 0. Well, that's interesting. So see where it's coming from? It's coming from here in the middle of my truck, not the greatest place for a horn to come from, right? So what I want to do there is go back to my level 1. And if I think about it, where's my image point? It is this little guy right here. And you can see that it's right there. I want it to be coming from the front. So all I'm going to do is click, and you see that it moved. And off we go. So now, when I come back here, of course my image point, oh, did my image point move for both of them? I don't think I have to do that. Of course it did. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be right there above that. Image point. Right there above that. A little off, but we'll see how it goes. And I got to move my truck. So now when I play this thing and hit the space bar, you see that it's coming from right there. Now, it's not the most perfect. You see, even though my image point is here, that it's coming from there. And we probably know that is because, if I go to my object, this also has an image point, and you can see that it's there. I go ahead, maybe I'll move that here. Okay. Now, one thing that you're noticing, and I think we talked about this with the clouds, is This is automatically, I mean, you didn't see me do anything, and I probably should have started there. There we go. See it shooting off now right there in the front? Isn't that great? Okay. You see it kind of shooting off. And that is because what I want to do is add a behavior to that. Let me first. And you can see that I added the behavior of bullet. And we all know what a bullet does. It comes out of the gun and just shoots fast and far, okay? That's what this bullet is doing. It's shooting fast and far. And I just did that to make it move, okay? So that's that. But here's something interesting when I go to, when I go to play this thing, if I'm driving along, whoa, I got to fix that a little bit. Wowzer. That is all because I moved my image point there, isn't it? Why is that one like that and the others? Oh. Oh my gosh, golly, I gotta do that for all of them. Okay, hang on. Okay. Now, let's see what that does. Okay, we're good now. Now, when I drive along, here I am, and I beat my horn, off it goes in that direction. But, when I come this way now, I drive, what the? I mean, I get their surround sound and all, but I definitely want that time to be going in the direction that I'm going, right? So you're wondering, how in the heck do I do that? And you probably already guessed, because we've done this, right? To a degree. And that is up here in this mirrored, not mirrored thing. Yeah? And the idea then is that we want it to go, when it's mirrored, to the left, when it's not mirrored, to the right. And we do that by simply, I'm going to add an event because I don't want to deal with anything I have. I'm not dealing with the keyboard. I'm not dealing with the truck here. What I'm dealing with is my actual horn, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click the horn. And I'm going to say what? All of these things are absolutely possible if you think, but really what I want to do is start with something called onCreated, which we can relate to either timeline starts or something like that in Captivate Storyline. So I want to go onCreated. So onCreated is pretty simple here. I'm just saying on the horn is onCreated. I don't want it to do anything, right? I just want it to be just fine. My thing is, I want to know what the heck do I have to do when it's mirrored? And that's pretty easy. All I'm going to do is say, add a condition to this thing. Where do I, oh, no. Right click and say add condition, add another condition, there we go. And I'm going to say when the truck, right? Because the truck is what's going to be spawning this thing. That's where it's going to be created. So we have to kind of, that's our starting point. So if the truck is mirrored, see, so on horn, if it's boom, that's fine. Just go ahead and do it. But if it's mirrored, what I want to do is set the angle, see that? To what? I want it to go the opposite direction. So the opposite is 180 degrees, right? See that? onCreated, fine. But if it's mirrored, I want it to go to 180 degrees. And that's just something we can parallel, again, just by referencing back. If it's not mirrored, we don't want that thing to do anything. But if it is mirrored, we want to go left, right? So let's see what happens here. Driving along, boo! Driving along, there we go. Oh wait, I forgot something. Oh, there we go. See that? So this is kind of imperative why it's good that you master some of these things that we're doing before we move on to other topics, okay? So there we go, driving along. Cool, right? Now, in this idea of the game space, and I know this seems simple, and I hope you have no problems doing this, but now in the idea of the game space is, now I want to say that, I want to say my oil slick that I got going on here. Maybe I want to drop oil into these barrels. I have no rational reason as to why, but for now, that's just something that we want to do, okay? When they have to drop it in here, And I wish I had a better reason for you, but we have to do the same exact thing, right? So I'm going to come back here to my level, and I want to say, nothing really here. What I want to do is on down press. Let's put it that way. Because of the way my game is set up with my back and left arrow, hitting down will make sense. So again, I'm going to come here to keyboard, which I have, but I don't have anything else reference to pressing the down arrow. I'll say OK. Done. We know that what we want this thing to do is very similar to the horn. Is I want to spawn, not the horn this time, but I want to spawn the oil. So I'm going to say truck. Look for, and you could also do this. So I'm just going to type up here, spawn. There we go, spawn another object. Make sure that's, oh wait, I got to make sure I do that. So oil, on, layer 1. And we're done. Okay? Makes sense, right? And let me go ahead and hit play here. Driving along, and there we go. Oh, geez. It just kind of sat there. And that is why. Because we want to add behavior to that. And this is what you saw this horn already do, so I want to make sure that I do that. All you do is you click on the object, right? Come over to here to add edit behaviors, add new behavior, and its movements and bullet. Okay? And we can see that it works just by testing this one here. Off it goes. Interestingly, and I'm sure you can tell already, is it's going which way? So if I go to level 1 and hit play, driving along and I hit down, it's shooting just like the horn did. I don't want that, right? I want it to go bye-bye, down here. Okay? So how do I do that? We know how to do that, don't we? So I'm going to go to the event sheet, and there's nothing here talking about the oil slick, so I have to add an event and say oil on created, which is right here. And I want to set the angle on created. I'm going to grab this and say set angle. And what would it, I guess it would be 90? Right? Or is it negative 90? I don't know. Let's see. Driving along. Oh, there we go. Down it goes. Cool, right? It's even coming right from the engine, which is all right. The difference being here is it's kind of not dripping. See that, how it's going down on its side? Not many raindrops do that. And that can be easily addressed by coming into here. And this is how you make your natural raindrop. But because of the angle, I want to grab, and I think is it this one? I want it to go that way, I think. I have my options here, so I got a 50-50. Let's see. All I did was change the rotation of it, right? So we know that it's coming down on its side, so if we were to put it on its side, it's going to come down on the right side here. So let me see if that one does it. Driving along, and now. 50-50 shot, and I screwed it up. So here we go. I gotta go the other way with it. And now we can go back to here and check. Driving along, and there we go. See that? Cool. Oh no! I'm stuck! There's my gameplay. See, I didn't time that well at all. Off I go now, though. There we go. Now, there's some neat things that we can do with these objects, and I think that it's imperative that we do that. I mean, you saw how that thing was just dripping along. I don't want that, right? So what I can do here is I'm going to come over here to my behavior. See, it's set to bullet. Speed is fine. We can deal with all of those things later. But here's something interesting: bounce off solids. So this is a game, and I do want them to time it quite well. I'm going to go ahead and check that, and that way, that kind of extra element here, when I come back to level 1 and preview this, when I'm driving along, if I miss, like, ooh, and boom, see, I hit a solid there, and it bounced away. Is that the best thing to do? Yeah, probably not, but not many oil slicks jump up into the air. But then you can see that, oh man, what's a harder game than I thought? Okay, there we go. See? And that's the instance there is, again, to add to the gameplay. These are solids. If you can see my little roads here, well, you could see that I added a behavior of solid to it. This one here, I did not. I just put a little bit of a movement on that thing and just a sign as we did with the clouds. But I didn't make it a solid, and that's because I wanted that. If you don't time it well, you see how that truck kind of sat into that? I know, weird gameplay. But here we go. I want to make sure I name that to barrel. I think they should all be called barrel, right? Okay, good. So one last thing that I'd like to do here is, here we are, we got this truck we're driving along, is add just one more thing, and I think it's what we've been all waiting for, especially now that we have this shooting thing going on. And what I want to happen is I want this oil thing to disappear when it hits that barrel, right? And here we go. There's not much I can do again. Like, we have to get better at it, and there's going to be instances in the future videos and future instruction that you see we can start building on these things. But for now, I can't, right? But what I want to say is, I want to say this oil, right? And I'm looking for on collision, on collision, on collision. Here we go. On collision with another object. And that's going to ask me what other object you want. And of course, I want the barrel, right? So I'm going to say barrel. Boom. So now there's a million things. So when this oil is on collision with that barrel, what do I want to happen? I want the oil, and I'm just going to say set, well, I don't want to set the visible. I'm going to say there's a thing called destroy. And here's the deal. So set visible means it goes away, like you don't see it. Destroy means it removes it from gameplay or your field or your stage or whatever the heck you want to call it. So I use, like, in this instance, I'm going to hit destroy. But just to think ahead here, if you see I have oil on collision with barrel, destroy, which is cool. But then I can add another action. So if I had, let's say I wanted to make it look like it was filling up, there's an action I could add to that. Or if I wanted to add a score, I could just say, just like we do in Storyline, just start adding to that specific trigger, and we're good to go. Yeah? So now when I go back to level 1 and I preview this, I'm driving along, and there, my oil dropped right in there. Oh, darn, I missed. Oh, darn, it ricocheted. And all the while I can beep in for people to get out of my way in any direction that I'm headed, and basically that's that. So there you have it on how to shoot in certain directions, and of course how to spawn objects and have them interact with other elements on the gameplay.